Roger, go for deploy.
The way I kind of always saw it is what my big lesson is, that if you tell your body is like this biological vessel that's connected to all of you, and if you force it and to go, it will go. And there's nothing telling you can't do something other than like your own free will and desire to do it. And as long as you're not afraid, as long as you don't fear or you don't fight or flight or do any of that, you can come up and achieve pretty much anything that is in the realm of possibilities.
Well, g'day there, gang. Welcome back to another episode of Adventure Fit Radio. This week on the show, we had myself and we had Mac interviewing Michael Wood Jr. So Michael Wood Jr., you'd say, I actually found out about the great man through a podcast he did with Aubrey Marcus, is someone else I follow, and I just found it deeply fascinating. And we got in touch with him. Bill got in touch with him a few months, I believe, prior to our podcast, and it was actually only in the weeks before realizing that that I was going to be having a chat to him that I started researching him, and he's a fascinating character, a really fascinating character. He was in the United States Marine Corps up until about 2001, from memory, and then he joined the Baltimore Police Department. But I think his biggest claim to fame was his book Crime and Punishments in the 21st Century, it just gives a very, not exposing, but a really great insight into the police department in the United States. And so he was himself in the Baltimore Police Department. He served in patrol and was in narcotics and things as well, which is really fascinating stuff. But I strongly recommend you have a check out his book. So it's Crime and Punishments in the 21st Century by Michael Jr. Wood. And I won't give too much more away, but really good show with Michael Jr. Wood and Michael Wood Jr. It's a little early here, and myself and Max. So guys, this show is brought to you by True Protein. So True Protein, a supplements little store there. It's an online store, excuse me, in Australia that we got rocking. Use the code ADVF for 10% off everything, actually, at trueprotein.com.au. I'm truly just a fan of their chocolate-flavoured protein. I'm a pretty simple bloke, but it seems to do the trick for me, and I think anything that tastes good is worthwhile in my eyes. So ADVF for 10% off at trueprotein.com.au. Guys, we are also sponsored, and by sponsored I mean brought to you by, and by brought to you by I mean sponsored by Audible. Audible is something that Bill and I couldn't speak highly enough of. Mac as well, I believe. We've been using it ever since we really started the show, actually back in 2016. Head to the webpage, guys. If you type in www.audibletrial, that's AUDIBLE trial.com/ADVF radio. You can sign up for a monthly subscription for about $16 Australian, and you can get one free credit a month there. And just as a sneaky plug, my book, actually, Yes, I'm Fine, Just Tired, will be coming out to Audible as one of the outlets in the next couple of weeks. So that should be really exciting. So if you do want to do it, get, obviously, number one, get Michael Wood Jr.'s book, Crime and Punishment, but also you can have a sneaky look at Tom Ahern there too. And finally, guys, we have a really cool ton of trips coming up with Adventure Fit Travel. We have a code. We have 10% off trips if you use radio, which is our code. So head to www.adventurefittravel.com. I'm really looking forward to Iceland 2.0. That's with me, myself, and jump on the website and have a look at all the cool stuff we have there, guys. So hope you enjoy the show. I'll speak to you in a bit. Bye-bye. Welcome back to Adventure Radio. It's a very special show because it's with my good friend Mac. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, brother.
Here we go. We're back. We're on. It's good. I'm loving it. All right, and we are sitting here with Michael Wood Jr., which we will get into. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, brothers.
Sweet. All right, mate. Well, feels weird kind of like introducing myself doing the tribute. But, Matt, do you want to introduce me, mate?
This is Tom doing the tribute.
Sweet. All righty, mate. Here we go.
greatest and best guest in the world. Michael. Long time, me and my friend Mac here. We was thinking about, guess to have on the chat. Then all of a sudden, there shined a brainstorming thought in the middle of Mac's fucking brain. And Mac said, why don't we get the police officer guy from Baltimore? And there it was. I got a tickle in my pants. Then my face went numb. Fuck, here we go. Okay, so he emailed you right off his chest, and it just so happened to be the best guest in the world. You're the best guest in the world. Look into my eyes and it's easy to see. 1 and 1 make 2, 2 and 1 make 3. It was destiny. Once every month, every years or so, when I chat to a legendary fellow, I love you so. Welcome.
That was fucking ridiculous.
I know. I wasn't halfway through.
You serenaded me to one of my biggest pet peeves. The cop from Baltimore.
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Oh, fuck. I'm sorry, mate. I'm sorry. But, you know, I'm playing devil's advocate.
Of course.
Mates, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How do you like that title?
I love Australia.
Have you been here before?
No, but we get to enjoy everything now. So now that we have Netflix, we have ABC, so we'll get all your shows and stuff like that. And your shows are great. Like, my biggest one lately is Glitch.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what that show is?
Dude, I'm fucking in Glitch. I'm literally in Glitch. I was an extra in that show.
No way.
Dude, legit. Like, have you seen the episode where it's the young kid, he was the army kid. Do you remember the army kid?
In
the First World War. He was in the First World War?
Charlie.
Yeah. Do you remember the scene when he pushes his mate to go into the brothel? Have you seen that episode? Dude,
they're fighting.
Yeah, I'm literally in that scene. I'm in that scene.
I'm gonna go back and look. That's like one of my favorite shows of like the juxtaposition between like America and the rest of the world. Because the very start of that show, when he's going through the graveyard. So, I mean, anybody that doesn't know, saves the show, there's a cop, and these people come out of graves just kind of coming back to the way that they were when they died, and suddenly they're fine and alive. But this cop goes and he responds to the graveyard, and people are fucking crawling out of graves naked. And this dude's like, hey, do you need help? Hey guys, does anybody need assistance? I have clothes in my house, please. And if this was an American cop, dude, there would be fucking bodies everywhere.
Sure.
The first thing that an Australian cop in Australian society is like, yeah, this deputy, he has to go help everybody, of course, duh. You know, in our context, those people would never make it out of that graveyard.
Man, I think we're just too dumb to realize what's going on. Zombie? Man, have a beer.
Yeah, everything's having it. Yeah, we want to be friends with everyone.
Yeah.
Well, it works. I think life in the Big Red does work much better that way.
It's good.
So, mate, how do you deal with the title being just the cop from Baltimore? What would you rather be known as?
Well, I don't know shit because I was a cop. A lot of people are cops. There's millions of them, and we're all generally morons because we're pawns in a system who don't really know what's going on and don't want to see what's going on. Who wants to see the bad that you're doing or that your career might not be what you expect it to be? And then if you face that issue, you're talking about quitting and maybe losing your pension. You can't stand up for your family. So we want to be in denial. The only reason I figured this shit out is because I went and I got an education and trying to actually work into scientifically what was happening and what we were doing. So, I mean, being a police management scholar is the only reason I know crap, and it's the only reason why anybody should listen to me. It's not because I was an enforcer. That gives me a perspective, but it doesn't provide any answers.
For sure, man. So let's just take the listeners back right to the beginning. So let's. Do you want to just give us a brief intro about who you are and what you did, and like even predating your time in the Marine Corps?
Sure. So, I mean, I was a poor kid. I grew up in a mixed race neighborhood, very much to like kind of how ghetto environments or poorer environments are in not just the city heart, but right outside of it. And those are mixed races. They're kind of all over the world. You'll know those type of neighborhoods where we're poor, but we're not like city kind of culture. It's different. There's really different cultures. So I was kind of in that separated from the city kind of life. I watched Cops. I thought it would be cool to go do that kind of stuff. I wanted to be the good guy, the hero, and I wanted to have all those car chases and all that fun shit. So when you're a member of oppressed class anywhere in this world, the easiest way to ascend out of being an oppressed class is to go ahead and start being a mercenary and killing for the oppressors.
True.
And we don't realize we're doing that, but that's what we do. So as I grew up and I saw more of the world, I'm like, I want to go I want to help. I want to do it a good way. And I'm an alpha male that knows nothing but, dumb alpha male shit.
Chicks.
So how do I go do that? I go into the Marine Corps, I go into policing or something like that. I can do good while still being a moron male. So I go into the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps was, a lot of people I signed the contract at 16. I left when I was 17. I wanted to get out of poverty. I wanted to go and try and explore a different new life. And whatever I had to do that, I was willing to do that. And when I was there, I got everything that I asked for. I ended up in a unit called the Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team that does like nuclear capture missions or rescues embassies if something happens to them, and forward deployed around the world. I loved the unit. It was great. Those 4 years I was done. I wanted to go back home, and that meant I ended up being a police officer in Baltimore. And whether you're even talking about dude, I did it because it was fun, and that's really not to help people. Like, I was like, go save the world and help people. Like, I wanted a good job that was fun, and I chose the Marine Corps because I wanted to do it the hardest, most energetic way and get into the shit. And so when I went in policing, I wanted to get into the shit too. So I went in Baltimore, which everyone paints as being the shit. I saw The Wire growing up and everything. So I wanted to work in The Wire. And when I went to Baltimore, that's where they put me. My first post was literally in West Baltimore, in the very block where Freddie Gray ended up being killed. And you see those videos of him being carted away. And so that was pretty much my first idea of policing. Like, I was just transferring my skill of being a mercenary, a blind mercenary, essentially. I didn't realize it at the time. And to kind of doing the same things that I was doing abroad and did that back home, where essentially it's either listen to me or I'll kill you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And mate, just on a quick tangent, I mean, Hell Week is something that's always fascinated me. Like, I've seen the documentaries and all this sort of stuff. There's a documentary that I watched that talks about the SAS here. Do you want to just quickly tell us about that? Like, is it hard? Like, as hard as they say?
Okay, so a basic principle that I kind of believe is that the military it does train people muscle memory, but they think that they're training elite combat capable soldiers. And I don't think that actually happens anywhere in the world. What I think is truly occurring is that this is a selection process of figuring out which people don't have a genetic predisposition to fearing physical violence.
Right.
So because you go through all these stresses and these trials, the people that actually make it through are just because they stay calm, they do the smart thing under pressure, they don't have a fight, flight, or fear response.
Yeah.
So really, I never had any fear. Fear wasn't a thing that I've ever experienced my whole life. I'm afraid of emotional damage, but not physical fear. So when I went out and I do things like Hell Week and you do these grueling different training requirements, I mean, I don't know. The way I kind of always saw it is what my big lesson is, that if you tell your body is like this biological vessel that's connected to all of you, and if you force it and to go, it will go. And there's nothing telling you can't do something other than like your own free will and desire to do it. And as long as you're not afraid, as long as you don't fear or you don't fight or flight or do any of that, you can come up and achieve pretty much anything that is in the realm of possibilities.
And do you have a mantra or something that you say to yourself that you can tell your body to keep going?
Yeah, I mean, I actually visualized it, like the times I started doing that. I started visualizing it like a machine. So if you think that like a machine's leg is pumping when you don't want to go any more steps in that 15 miles, I mean, I'm not even a big dude, so when I was carrying all that infantry equipment, like that shit's heavy. But it was like, if you tell your body to step, it's not even like a robot where there's one piston. Like I have multiple pistons that are working and telling it. So if you just, like I was just telling you, if you just focused and visualized your leg is like as that machine taking its next step forward as long as you tell it to, like even if it's pain is just a sensory thing telling you that one of those muscles, one of those pistons isn't working right. It's just communication.
For sure, yeah. Do you know what? It's interesting. Like
that sounds crazy. I know.
Dude, you sound like a lunatic. I do.
It's interesting because when I was walking to Everest Base Camp twice, and looking back, or whenever you're fresh, you always have these, I'm gonna last the whole time, and you look at all these SEAL fits and they're like, they're treading water in ice for 3 hours and stuff like that, and you're like, yeah, I'll do that. But then in the actual moment when you're sleep deprived and it's cold, when I was trekking to Everest, my little mantra was one bite at a time, and it came from like, how do you eat an elephant? And you've got this massive thing in front of you, and how do you eat it? It's just one bite at a time. And for me, like that one bite at a time turned into one step at a time. And it didn't matter how big or small the step was, as long as I kept taking one at a time, you eventually got there, and it took your mind off the pain, which is cool. But what do you do when you're mentally strong now? You've had a nice sleep. You're sitting in your nice booth there, and you're looking so damn pretty, and you styled your hair for us.
I wish you were here.
What do you do when you're sleep deprived and you're cold and you're at that breaking point? What can you tell our listeners? Something to because a lot of our listeners go through tough workouts and obviously through tough times. What's something that you can sort of inform them on that kept you going?
Well, I mean, I do think every single person's body is extremely different in what they're capable of and what their signals are. The only thing that I really try to do, I would say, is separate what these things are. Their communication. Like, you don't actually have an injury or something. Like, the world's not like that pain. It's not even real. It's an interpretation. It's your body telling you something. Now, what that's telling you is something that you need to learn about yourself and what that means. But I think a lot of people dramatically overtrain because they get this idea that work equals success or effort equals success. And especially with pushing your body, that's completely not true. You want to get to the point where you tear a muscle, but then if it's torn, you must stop. You're only going to do further damage if you do push yourself, saying that you can't do. Now, if it's your life and your life's on the line and you have to fucking do that march, I'm telling you, your body can do it.
Yeah.
But use those things when you have to. Otherwise, you should be preparing yourself for that time when you may actually need it. You don't actually need it to show off your bro in the gym that you can put up 280 and fucking throw your spine out. That's foolishness. That's broness. Don't fall into the broness. Be a smart soldier and a smart warrior. Dudes that are 6'4" and 240 pounds make shitty soldiers, and they're not going to win any real combat fights. They might win in a ring, but that's not even like what combat is.
And do you find that that's a lot to do with ego as well, moving from the Marine Corps into the police force where you're trying to battle so many different egos on different levels? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you in that aspect that you are dealing with a lot of egos. But I think there's like the mantra that always remains true, that the one who's talking the most really isn't the one that you need to worry about. So it always seemed to be, to me, to like focus on the core issues of what's going on. So if somebody is in that state where they're aggressive, then you need to talk to them on that state. And that's not to be more aggressive, especially being a cop. It is my job to resolve the situation, not to win the fight. Those are very different things. This depends where I am and what your mission is and the actual goal of whatever your function is as a combat. Instead of I knew that the guys in the street were kind of in that bro masculinity thing thing too. But if you're talking and you're into that, you actually don't know what the fuck you're doing, because any real fighter will tell you that you don't really want to be in a street fight, because once you've been in enough fights, you know that anyone can win any fight. And so you would look for alternatives to the actual fight. So I think as an elite trained Marine, or any of these elite units like Force Recon and Marine Corps, or any of the Marine units that you guys have, they were good, so did the British ones too, that you're kind of talking about a mentality that is looking to win but not get to ego boost. I think when you've been through enough shit that you kind of get put in your place when it comes to having that ego. If you've been around enough people that are in elite statuses, you've been bitch slapped enough to know that that's possible at any point in time. So use your brain before you use your body.
I think for me, like a really good thing in terms of the ego here, is that understanding of the balance, to have confidence and humility at the same time. And I think for me, when I think about my ego and I think about the influence it plays on the direction of my life, I want to make sure that I'm constantly trying to keep myself in check to when I pursue an ambition that doesn't make me arrogant or doesn't make me feel like special, I'm better than anyone else, but there is still an element of confidence there. But then at the same front, I don't want to fall into something that I'm doing in response to fear as well. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping that sense of humility so that I'm confident but humble, but also at the same time, I'm not doing anything to hide away from a fear stimulus. And it's interesting you said before, when you were going through the Hell Week thing, that understanding of like not having any fear. I think something that's really helped me in life is actually understanding where my fear manifests itself in different aspects of my life, and then actually knowing how to work through those challenges and know, actually there's a tiger on my fucking bed. I probably don't need to do something about that now, Did you find that we can probably move away from the Hell Week now, and all that sort of stuff, but when you moved into the police force, did you feel like people had a good understanding of that emotional intelligence, or was that Mac's talking about, was that element of ego still pretty prevalent?
Well, I mean, I don't want to fall into stereotyping cops, but I think that a lot of stereotypes come from some truth.
Yeah.
So you end up, I think, in policing with less than 10% of people who have gone into the job kind of with the mindset that this is something that is scary but not necessarily dangerous, and is like an exercise of restraint. Like a soldier on the streets of America, his life has to be less valuable than the citizens. That's kind of what the role is. And if you can view yourself through that lens, you'll be okay. But then the other 90% are between people who were bullies and people who just want a good job. And the people who just want a good job, they don't do shit. And the people who were bullies, they seem to make the small percentage that's kind of doing the American ideal, which I disagree with the American ideal of policing. But the ones that are trying to do that ideal, I think that their jobs become almost impossible because of those other 90% that are either a hindrance or are doing anything.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Mate, I suppose let's get straight into the chase. I suppose in 2014, you were, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's when you made your first public comment about the wrongdoing in the police force. What sparked you to go public about this, and what's happened since then? And maybe even give people a backstory on what it was you saw and a bit of context behind the content.
Sure. You definitely will have to kick my ass back in gear and steer me back online, because I'm not going to remember all that. So, I mean, nothing is ever we associate change with these dramatic events, but really psychology says that's not really what happens. These things are slow progresses, and we just become aware of them in these traumatic events or these big events. So it definitely goes back a long time when I was a detective and started realizing that the drug war was a fruitless thing that I thought was very harmful. I thought my role being a major case narcotics detective was definitely making the neighborhood worse, because I began to see it without them knowing I was there. And the prejudice and the changing of you as an instrument being there is kind of all throughout science. We're never actually measuring something properly because our presence messes up the reality of the situation. So I was always trying to figure out like a professional issue. I thought we had a professional problem. We weren't doing the job good enough. So my bachelor's degree is in criminal justice. And then I started focusing on improving the professionalism. I wrote a guide trying to do perfect policing and best practices that I put out and published throughout the agency throughout the United States. It's still out there. People still buy the thing. And I then started to pursue my master's degree. I realized we had a management issue, so I switched my master's degree over to management, trying to figure out where we had these disincentives and incentives misaligned from the goals of policing. So I was kind of looking at it educationally, trying to break it down. But I'd also gotten retired. I got retired out of the agency just because I had an injury. I didn't quit policing because of some moral high ground. I would have stayed and got my pension. Come on. I ended up being retired out because of a medical injury and kind of got more focused into it at that time. Black Lives Matter was kind of rising, so we were becoming more aware of the situations of police violence being in our face with cameras and stuff like that around. And then I kind of still remember the day quite distinctly when I lived in Pennsylvania at the time. And I watched a YouTube video of Tamir Rice being killed in Cleveland. And Tamir Rice was a 12-year-old boy who was standing at a park playground area, like a gazebo, and was shooting a little BB gun at trees and stuff like that. And somebody called the police. The police arrive. They jump out of the car and kill him right away. They didn't even have the gun out or anything like that. He just had it on him. They jump out, kill him, don't render medical aid, do everything possibly wrong in policing that there could be wrong. And this is talking about a 12-year-old boy the cops got out murdered. And then the police and the unions were defending this action. And there's nowhere in best practices, there's nowhere in training, there's nowhere in tactics or anywhere that says you behave this way. And it was the ultimate expression at that time of our religion. Policing is a religion. And because of that ideology, they were so entrenched in defending themselves that they couldn't even grasp the horror of executing a 12-year-old boy on a playground in the city of Cleveland that's famous for a movie of a white kid playing with a BB gun out in public.
True.
So, that was a real emotional break for me. That kind of felt like a bigger issue. And then when I really finally spoke was because all that came home and my distances were shot out because Freddie Gray was killed in Baltimore, and it was in where I policed with my police department, my union, people that I knew, and they were defending it like there was some way possible that a man who didn't have anything illegal on him was thrown into a paddy wagon and taken out dead, and we don't have responsibility. The concept that we wouldn't have responsibility, and that was so far flung from my idea of anything that policing should be that I just felt like I couldn't even be even call myself a cop or call myself somebody that cared about society and the law without pointing out this level of tyranny.
I think it's a fascinating one. You remember, growing up, you hear the stories, and you see the LA riots and things with Rodney King and all this sort of stuff.
Oh, hold on, let me say something.
Yeah.
Yo, they burned down LA. And that motherfucker didn't even die.
Well, that's the thing, yeah.
That's how complacent we've got.
Yeah, 100%. It's just weird. What I'm getting at, I guess, is this thing keeps rising and falling, and we are, I guess, taking an objectional look at it because we just see it from it's happening somewhere else and have another country. We don't really have any sort of bias towards, the left or right. Why does this thing keep coming up, man? Why is it bigger now? I just feel like there must be some sort of systemic value within the police force or something there that maybe gives rise to people, being interested in becoming a cop that probably move towards this sort of thing,
Well, you do, but I think those things are relatively present in all of policing. Yeah. There is one thing that is incredibly unique about America, and I think you probably know what it is.
Yeah. We're talking about guns?
Saturated in guns.
All right, yeah.
And so I wrote a piece that was published in The Guardian called "The Second Amendment is a Recipe for Police Killings." Yeah. And I need people to understand that the whole concept of the Second Amendment, whether we get into the argument of what that is, and I've been in that gun control argument anymore, I just don't care about what people in the past said. Yeah. The reality right now is that we are in a society where what you are saying on one side of your mouth is that people like me are heroes and that we should be praised and we are the thin line that provides you freedom. But your most important issue, and you will allow our country to be one of the most deadly places on earth of developed countries because you want to fucking kill me? What? That's insanity. Like, the whole purpose of the Second Amendment is so you can kill me, a soldier and a cop. Like, I think you're going to win that battle. For one, you're going to win that battle much better in the battle of ideas. All things are really battle of ideas, and might make it right is always a temporary situation, and it's called tyranny. But ultimately, the cop is afraid of the person having the gun. The person that's in the car stop is afraid of the cop because he has a gun, not because he's a cop, but because if you make a mistake, he'll fucking kill you.
Yeah.
You get away with it.
Yeah.
So that dynamic makes everything unique. Now, I think policing everywhere else is just as evil, but we certainly highlight it much more here because of the guns. The general principle of policing all around the world is there's three pillars, and that's like my scholarly argument. And specifically in America is where I make the argument, but it's relatively true everywhere. And that is, police they create and maintain the oppressed classes, and then they extract resources from those oppressed classes to fund their own oppression.
Yeah.
And then they trick the actually oppressed into being the oppressors by removing their susceptibility to law, which looks like, police don't get parking tickets and I had a good salary, things like that. The second pillar is the evaluation of property over the lives of the oppressed classes. So now, will you kill somebody to protect a CVS from a thug, whatever thug is in your community? You will. But would you use the police to kill Bill Gates from burning down a CVS? No, you just simply wouldn't. So you value the lives of the elite's property even over the value of the elite's property over the lives of the oppressed classes. And then in America, it's the continued genocide of the Native American nations, and it's the same for you with Aboriginal nations. And we almost every nation finds their oppressed class to fuel off of.
Definitely. Like, we have a massive issue with what's going on with the Indigenous population as well. But do you know what? This is something that I find quite fascinating, is that, a really big trait that leads towards fascism, or that feeling, that like removal of liberty, is that underlying sentiment of victimhood. And what you're describing and what I'm kind of getting at, and from what I've researched, is like you have two parties, and this is not just America, this happens all over the world, but with this particular issue, you have two sides where you have like one side that's like police brutality, this is ridiculous, and then there's that real sense of victimhood. And on the other side, you have these people that truly, like yourself, have been in there to serve, and they want to serve, and they want to do the right thing, and they feel like everyone's having a massive go at them. So there are these two classes of people that feel oppressed, and I just feel like that's creating a huge division in that area,
And they're both mistaken. So that's like, one thing that Mark Twain said was that those who are well-read are misinformed, and those who are unread are uninformed. Yeah. So we're always being manipulated by these influences of power, and that's what we're supposed to be fighting against, is power, not thinking that the other is the thing. So in America, I can't really speak obviously for most other countries, but one of the reasons why I'm highly ineffective, I really think, or at least it takes me a long time, is that the fight in America is to be the oppressor, not end the oppression. So that means you need to get on a side and paint somebody else as the other, which then you will dominate, which just then makes you the tyrant. That doesn't change anything. It just switches the faces. And so, like when you said in policing, I think that really they're missing the point, because this is not about police officers. This is about policing the systems and the institutions. I really think that we got over a lot of our racial issues in culture, but we didn't change the actual systems and the laws and the institutions and how they operated under that light. And that's the next step that we need to take. But one example of why this is really bad is I wasn't racist. I had black friends growing up. Like the idea, my whole goal was to be colorblind. Yeah. Which I think was a mistake. Being colorblind, I think was a mistake, because it kind of blinded me from what was happening to people and where I was.
Yeah.
But But that whole idea is that I had no racist motivations, but because of the system, my actions were racist. So the thing is I don't care if a cop is racist. I care what the actions are, and that's what we need to focus on. The job and the incentives and the disincentives of the job and how people are paid and what they are doing versus what you think they're doing. We need to align those things up. So in like America, here's a easy example: is they say to protect and serve on the side of the cars. Nowhere is that a requirement in anywhere for cops to protect and serve anybody. Period. So, I mean, that's just not what police are paid to do. And so we have the idea that that's what they do, and they don't. So if we align those things where they are required to protect and serve by having civilians on top of them guiding that direction versus the tyranny of a local politician or something like that, then we can have long-term goals where we actually solve the things that are correlated with crime. Right now, it's literally impossible. The fourth strongest correlate to violent crime is the actual presence of police. Policing is violence. You cannot reduce violence with more violence.
Yeah. But it's also...
I don't know where my thought's going on that, so if you want to steer me back on course, go ahead. I don't even remember the original question.
Yeah. Michael, it's almost like it's sad, right, that someone needs to win, right? And the fact that for us to win, we need to paint, or I shouldn't say us, it's unfortunate that people think for them to win, they need to paint someone down. They need to stand on top. They need to be more powerful. They need to almost shame them and point fingers at them that they are the problem. And this creates a whole fear-based selection of power. You know, if you ignite enough fear into people and blame someone else, people are going to move with that tribe who is the victor because they feel comfortable, they feel safe and secure in a state of fear and unknown. And so I don't even know where I'm going with that, but it's just interesting from what you've been saying, or from listening to what you've been saying, that you're trying to you're trying to get to the context of these issues, but people are still stuck on the top layer of the content. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I would even say that they're probably going further in the other direction, and I'll break that down with race. But what you were just saying right there is, I say, I'll quote myself, which is always, quite a pompous thing to do.
I'm the best.
The quote that I have in the book is, people are more comfortable in familiar violence than in unfamiliar safety. So that is what we do. It's like we other, and then as long as we keep the other away, we feel safe. So the domestic partner will feel safe in her house despite being abused because that abuse is familiar. And what we really fear is the unfamiliar. So to step out of that tribe is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And when there's only two tribes, it gets even more dangerous. So when you talk about the Second Amendment and the crafting of America, the other note that I had written down was that John Adams, who was the main author of everything, his biggest fear in America wasn't the government, it was the two-party system. There's a quote I put on Instagram if somebody wants to look that up, but it goes into what he said is that once you do that, then you have these two sides that are just trying to subterfuge each other, and then nothing gets accomplished, and everybody just tries to fight one another when we're supposed to be protecting America, not liberal America or conservative America or any of those concepts. We need to be the human race. So that's why I think when I was saying they proliferate the ideas, is if you other somebody, then you must create the categories. And the categories of division are what we use to justify the fighting when we all really want the same underlying goals, period. So if you say, listen to me because I am black, I get in trouble a lot for this. And I'm like, guys, race is not real. So as long as you make yourself black and you categorize yourself into this othering group, then you are then saying that you are different.
That's
you are
right.
less human or a different type of human from everybody else. So therefore, you're already sewing in this othering. And we are the human race. Please fucking pick up a goddamn scientific journal and realize that race is a fabrication.
Totally. I could not agree more. Like, I mean, if you go back long enough, we're all fucking mushrooms. Like, we're all fungi 3 billion years ago, Like when we're not even human beings back then, but that's just what I know. It's just what happens. So it's interesting as well. In 1996, I think it was here, we had a Port Arthur massacre, one of the worst. I think it was our worst massacre. And then we just had this huge just take away the guns, and it just worked. Like, I mean, we haven't had a massacre since, I believe, or it's just been reduced so much. I know we kind of touched on it before in terms of like, why this issue is so prevalent because of the Second Amendment. It's, people think like it's taking away people's rights and all this sort of stuff, but how do you feel? And I think all of us three here, are on like the same side of the argument here, but how is it so hard for people just to not even, I guess, see that guns could be an issue? Like I've heard like an argument say before, like, people are bad and they're just going to do bad things whether we have guns or not. But like, it's so hard to throw a million knives at like 4 seconds when you can just get a fucking automatic rifle and just take away people, I just can't see. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think what we end up trying to do is trying to rationalize people out of an irrational position. And I don't think that that's really ever going to work. I mean, on the surface, it's readily true that what I say is the guns and weapons, period, they make the weak strong, and they get caught up in that. But they make the strong even stronger, and they make the strongest impossible to stop. Now, if you think that America is so powerful and we have nothing to fear from other countries, why is that? It's because we're carrying the biggest sticks.
Yeah.
So it is ultimately the idea that you want to be the tyrant. You want tyranny, which is completely against American ideals.
For sure.
But I think that we have a hard time breaking it down because it's the same barrier I hit with policing. I am not just telling professors in criminal justice, which I'm telling you is a religion and it has absolutely no data to support it. If you have a criminal justice degree, a PhD in criminal justice, you got a PhD in fucking imagination because there is no data to even base the field off of. Like an arrest is a measurement of a cop's activity, not a citizen's activity. When you say crime is this, you're not saying that. You're saying cops did this action called charging somebody for a crime. That has nothing to do with how many of those crimes actually took place. So I'm not just telling you that we need to change. I'm telling you that everything that you know is bullshit. You've been doing it wrong the whole time. And not only are you an idiot, so are your parents and so are your grandparents and so forth. But what we need I want people to understand is, to my great-grandkids, what I'm saying right now, I'm an idiot. I'm uninformed compared to the amount of information they're going to have at that time.
For sure.
So I think we're doing the same thing with guns, where it's a cultural aspect. So not only are you saying that it's not the best thing for society, we're saying that your society and your choices of your culture are harmful to not just everybody else, but even you. The presence of your gun makes it more likely that your fucking kid will be killed by that gun.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're an idiot. Yeah. So it only entrenches you deeper into that kind of ideal because we're trying to rationalize somebody out of religion, and the gun culture and the policing culture are both religious ideologies that are very difficult to get out through rational arguments. Yeah. That's just my bullshit test though.
So where's the light at the end of the tunnel? Because listening to that, I went through a couple of waves. I was really motivated and inspired, and then you sort of ended off going, well, what's the point?
Yeah, I'm going to get a gun.
We're up against two, it seems like undefeatable religions, right? And so where is the light at the end of the tunnel for your grandkids? What's in the next 50 to 100 years?
I think that the moral arc of justice, so to say, like King said, does bend towards justice all the time, or the moral arc of history bends towards justice. So every generation is always better than the next. Our fears are probably completely unfounded, just like our parents were and the parents were before them. I remember people talking shit about Marilyn Manson, and it's just like, did you listen to any of his lyrics?
No shit.
Obviously didn't even bother to read a single lyric.
Yeah, but he's wearing makeup.
Right, I mean, that's it.
Didn't he root Kings on stage?
Fuck shit, and he wore makeup. makeup, so he must be scary and dangerous. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
So, but to us now, I mean, now that we're getting more authority and more power in the system, it's obviously going to be better.
Yeah.
Now, my daughter is 13. The idea that you can convince her that a 13-year-old Syrian boy is her enemy, I find fucking impossible.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
like, each time we're going to get better, and we have these delays. And once you're aware, it feels like shit because you're aware that, like, right now, every time that the less police that I convince to change, or the more I butt up against this religion of policing, in my mind, that means another Tamir Rice is getting murdered at a rate of 200 or 300 a year, because we kind of conflate those numbers, but the actual unjustified shootings are probably around 200 to 300 a year. And so that means my lack of success is allowing that to happen to some level, and that feels painful. But we do keep getting better and better. Enough people do understand the Australia argument, like you're saying, where it's a harm reduction. And like, I hate the idea of guns being compared to knives. For one, go ahead and fucking knife 457 people at a fucking concert.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not gonna succeed. And so it's always about harm reduction and what these things benefit you. So like a knife, like we're gonna accept that people get stabbed. Why? Because we like fucking steak.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, we're all saying that we're gonna accept a certain amount of people being stabbed so we can cut our steak easily.
True.
But if you're gonna accept 30,000 people being dead by handguns every year so that your little dick can feel a little bit bigger, we got some problems.
Well, it depends on how little the dick is, but I mean, sometimes you need a gun to turn a light switch off, You know what this makes me think is that there is just so much fear in the world, And when you made that that analogy of your daughter like starting to fear a little kid from Syria, for example, like even that phrase, like I remember, so I was born in 1993, and I remember growing up, I was like 11, 12, 13 when September 11 was a really big thing. And, as with most families, like my parents had the TV on and all this sort of stuff, and you hear 9/11, and you keep hearing the war on terror, the war on terror, the war on terror. We've got to stop terrorists, And like, I'm thinking about back to that now, having grown up and cut literally all media out of my life, it like that phrase is just like the war of fear, like terror, like that is such an intangible, like who the fuck are you fighting? What does that even mean, How much do you think fear...
purpose.
Well, yeah.
But you look at kids, right, and they play with each other, and it's they have no fear against the other. They just want to play because we're all one. And then it's either the family or the culture and your little community that then breeds that fear, or don't talk to that person. Or even something simple like don't sip this hot soup because you'll burn yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, let the kid sip the hot soup and figure it out himself.
Yep, absolutely.
So what you just made me think of is, I know I can get on high horses, and I don't want to. I'm always biting my tongue, trying to say shit that I know I shouldn't say in public. But I would always hear stories like parents would be like, "Oh my God, my daughter's afraid to go to sleep in the dark, and the monster's in her closet." And I'm like, "Well, who the fuck taught her?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not fucking real.
Yeah.
Teach your daughter to feel monsters. Now your daughter is terrified because you're a fucking asshole or you're ignorant. Well, I mean,
But this is a problem, Michael.
that was taught to her, and that was taught to somebody else. So, like, the basic fundamental principle that I have, I talk about in my book, so I'll pitch it real quick, Crimes and Punishment in the 21st Century. You can find it everywhere, and Audible will be releasing soon, so you can listen to me talk about it. I don't know why you'd want to do that, because everybody thinks their own voice sounds fucking miserable.
Yeah.
But where was I even going with that?
Mate, just your voice sounds miserable. I'll leave it there.
No,
I'm joking.
no, before that, I had a point.
We're talking about it. It's,
No. Okay, so I'm back on track. So the idea, I don't believe in free will or autonomy. And I don't think there's any science or evidence that support that we have free will. And that will make us say to ourselves, well, then what's the point of life if I'm not in control of my actions and if I'm just the equation of my DNA and my experiences, which we are. Mm-hmm. But what that means is that our actions then actually literally do play the influence in someone else's experiences and does change how they are. So the more experiences that are positive for the growth of society, then the more we're literally changing everybody else, even if it's subconscious.
For sure. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Like, even if irrespective of free will, and then you can become an existentialist, whatever. Like, even if you take on that approach, like, you matter to someone else, and we have a right to make other people better around us,
You matter to every single person you interact with.
Yeah.
At some point in time, there was somebody. Okay, I'll give a personal example even. So there was one time we were out at a restaurant, like a Chick-fil-A or something like that. And I got teared up at my daughter's level of empathy here, but she saw somebody there that just for some reason looked like they were down. And being a 13-year-old girl, she went to like this 20-year-old girl and gave her a compliment and said something nice. And then that girl came back over later and said how that changed her entire day, her perspective on everything. And that was just a second of an interaction. Like, how you conduct yourself with other human beings could not possibly be more important.
For sure.
I'll just chip in. My girlfriend last week came home and she had tears in her eyes, and just this story even now just still gives me goosebumps and makes me welt up. She was just down at our local supermarket, and there was a homeless guy out the front with a sign. And so she just went in there and bought him a couple of cans of tuna and a banana, and then gave him $10 on the way out. And she sort of felt a little bit awkward doing it, and so she just sort of did it and walked off quite quickly and didn't read the sign at all. Anyway, she got in her car, and as she was driving past on the main road, he was sitting there bawling his eyes out. And it's those little things that at the end of the day, everyone's human, and what you may think is such a small little gesture, even the way that you communicate to someone, like in your tone. There's been times in my life where someone's come up to me and go, "Oh, remember this time?" It's like, no, I don't even remember saying that to you. Yeah. But that's had a massive impact on their life. So the tiniest things that we can take for granted significantly can alter the course of someone's life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people hear us as saying that as like we're better, but it's not. It's just be aware of this reality. And we're not ever. Here I am fucking speaking for you guys, but it's not like we're saying that we're better or that we don't make errors in this thing. It's just that being aware of it at all times will at least put us in a perspective and a mindset that will allow us to take advantage of situations that we could have passed up.
Absolutely. Hey, Mike, we might move towards 3 from. Do you remember your 3 from 3 questions?
No.
We'll do 3 from 3. We'll do 3. We normally end the show with 6 from 6, which is 3 questions from me and 3 questions.
What about the ones you sent me? I have my list.
Yeah.
Right here on the screen.
Oh, you got him. Sweet. Yeah, cool. All right, I'll do 6 from 6, and I'll just keep pumping the questions at you, mate. So, all right, what is your favorite travel destination, my friend?
So far, the most beautiful place I have seen was hands down Hawaii. Much hasn't competed with that from a visual aspect. Culturally, I really, really like Japan.
Oh, nice.
Right? So those would be my 2 highlights. I haven't gotten to Australia yet. If you guys can find out a way to get me citizenship, I may just blow this joint. So.
Yeah, sweet. We'll get you over here, mate. We're pretty big wheels here, so we know the government,
Hey, just a quick question on Japan. Why culturally? I've been there before, and I absolutely loved it. They're very, very law-abiding. Is that why you're lenient towards that? And why I say law-abiding, we were. They stand there, they're trying to cross the road, and there's no cars for days, and they will still wait for the green man to tell them to go. And meanwhile, I'm sort of walking across because it's just sort of common sense to me, and I'm getting death stared. However, I still loved their culture. What's your reason?
Yeah, they're like, what in the fuck are you doing? You're like, but there's nobody there. Yeah, I mean, so even if they're not happy and having a good day, they're going to do those things. And a lot of these ideas we're talking about are already in their culture, where they'll be courteous to other people and they'll follow those societal rules. I'm not a fan of law abiding by any means. I'm a fan of moral behavior towards other human beings. I don't give a shit what the law says. I think if there's any role that police officers do have, it's in mitigating the stupidity of the law versus reality of human behavior. So I would say the same thing. I mean, with you, just the culture, the idea. I mean, I remember I got stopped, and they're not excessive. We had a Marine that got drunk and went ridiculous fighting the cops there. And for one, they didn't have guns, but there was like 10 cops fighting this dude. And they had their sticks. You know, he's like 6'3" American Marine, so he's like twice the size of every single one of those cops.
Yeah.
But they were all just fighting him. Like the idea to them that they were going to hurt him in any way that they didn't absolutely have to, like you could tell it wasn't crossing their mind whatsoever. The train shut down at night. The police go home at night. There's no police at 3 o'clock in the morning in Japan, in Tokyo. So like I had to sleep on a park bench once we get stuck out in Tokyo, as many dumb Americans do. And like the idea that even if I would have dropped $500 and a Japanese person would have saw it, they probably would have came over, picked it up, put it in my pocket, and went about their day. Like, it is perpetual safety everywhere you go.
Fuck, that's insane. Hey, what about your one place in the world that you would love to go to but you haven't been yet?
I'll go ahead and stick with Australia.
Yes.
Because I do not want to go with the cold anymore. I'm fucking done with the cold. That's why I live in Arizona now.
Oh, yeah.
I went from Pennsylvania, which is the north and the cold, I went to the Sonarant Desert. I have scorpions in our house now because I'm done with the cold.
Yeah. Let's have fires in our house. I just jump in every now and then. And Michael, what about a book that you could recommend, mate, apart from your own, even though it's good? But yes, a book that you could recommend our listeners.
I know I should have been more prepared for a book, but I'm going to cross over these two things with the person and the book thing. So I'm going to go with the book about Mother Teresa that Christopher Hitchens wrote.
Oh, yeah.
So it's small and it's easy to read, but the whole point of that is to give people one of those step backs.
Yeah.
Where we're like, what have we imagined is reality and what really was the reality? And I don't think there's a better case than Mother Teresa, who was really fucking evil.
Oh, man.
You gotta break it down.
I know. Christopher Hitchens he was just so fascinating. He was one of the most beautiful minds. Like, I could listen to him all day. I love him.
Well, that would obviously be my person that I would say. It wouldn't be, if I go with a role model, I'll go ahead and I'll switch over to the corn subject so we can get into that in one second real fast. But yeah, I mean, if there's one person I could ever sit down and talk to, it would hands down be Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah.
And I completely am so happy that he died before Twitter.
So true.
I feel like I'd be like, oh, he's a fucking moron.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very true.
So I'm kind of glad he's dead as much as I don't like not hearing him anymore. So to jump in your question of like a role model, my arm is tattooed in corn tattoos. My arm is tattooed in corn tattoos.
Oh, yeah.
The band. And one of the reasons, it has nothing to do with really the band. It's because that was kind of the culture I was in. It marks time frames. And that was a band I'd always been with. So I remember like going to the store and buying CDs and stuff like that. So it actually like marks periods in history of my growing up. But one thing I definitely realized is that listening to the lyrics and listening to the way that Jonathan Davis, the lead singer of Korn, carries himself, he definitely redefined to me a certain level of what masculinity is. Because while by every means of what I grew up with as masculinity and how maybe I've been traditionally measured as masculine are the exact opposites of him. He would be express his emotions, be vulnerable, would never win a fist fight for his life, like those kind of things. But there's that honesty and that care and that introspection and empathy for others, I think is a hell of a lot harder than being a dickhead. So that, like, being a man is really something that he helped redefine as somebody that is beneficial to society, and being a protector itself also doesn't mean being an ass. I mean, you can protect in a lot of different ways.
That's fascinating. I love it. I think, I did hear that, Jonathan Davis used to get I think for one of the albums, he actually used to get his manager to beat the shit out of him, to just go into such a dark hole that he could write from such a level, that was just so connecting.
Yeah, that's his forte, embrace the suffering. He probably does that to his own self-destructive forte. But I mean, that's just destroying ourselves in a different way. I think, I don't even want to say alpha males. I really think that's a wrong way of framing it. But people that buy into that culture of, I don't even want to say toxic masculinity. God, but it's like a fucking social justice.
Yeah, you do.
But that idea of masculinity that we previously held, I think, is a very immature expression.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you go back another generation, Michael, to the Beatles, they were also the pioneers. The reason why they sort of cottoned on is because they showed vulnerability through songs. They expressed their emotions through songs, and sort of up until that time, it was, macho, manly type of stuff. So it's slowly happening. It'd be interesting to see where it is all at in, say, 20 to 50 years' time.
I think we've successfully emasculated most of our younger men.
Yeah, and that's what's going to be really interesting as well. Who plays which, or who dominates sort of the male or the female hormones.
Yeah, my daughter, though, is, I constantly joke that the way I see males these days, or men, is a better term to use in that case, I have no desire to protect my daughter whatsoever. You guys are going to be no match for this chick. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not afraid of you abusing her or anything. The paradigm has been shifted amongst
I love it.
young teenagers.
I think
That's exactly why we need guns then, Michael.
Yeah, true.
We made to protect ourselves from these damn women.
True. It's true.
Once they lose their power of sex with VR, I don't know. We're gonna have real equality. We'll see how people feel about that.
Yeah, man.
It's an interesting world we live in where, like, that those roles are like they're changing, and I think it's good in a way, like, what the feminists did in the 70s and 80s, leading towards, true equality is great, and we're kind of like swinging the pendulum a little bit too aggressively now. But what it does, for me anyways, ask the question is, okay, well then, how do you define masculinity within your own realm? And I think masculinity is no longer defined by, how many chicks you've banged, like how much money you've got, but it's like now, I guess, becoming defined through authenticity. And I think authenticity is very empowering, and it's also very attractive to women or men, depending on what, whatever you're into. Like, it doesn't matter, whatever, but it's, I think authenticity, just for your own person to actually follow and pursue a life that you want to truly live, is so, like, for someone who is an authentic male, when you see or interact with someone, they just have this, like, beautiful radiation of just happiness and purpose, and people want to be around that, whether it's for a relationship, whether it's for sex, like, whatever, So I think the one thing that this, like, modern political front is getting us to do is, like, constantly think about where we stand. And I think when you really start to define your own individuality, like, you're only going up,
Well, the science absolutely supports you, actually. So authenticism is the literal word that is all throughout the scientific literature. And I've written about it a bunch of times, that I truly believe as well that all the sciences point to the future being about authenticism being the preferred trait and the most valuable trait that anyone can have, because a lot of our walls and perceptions are being torn down. The more we're the more people can see the real us, hiding the real us is essentially offensive to them. And so we respect the people that are truly, that word, authentic. And I think that's why Trump is president. I personally don't have the problems with it that a lot of people do in this country, but it should be clear to be understood that this dude is president because he's authentic, and he does things like where they're like, oh, he speaks like a sixth grader. Well, yeah, the average reading level in America is sixth grade. So the dude's speaking to his audience and being authentic. He doesn't care what you say about him. He's going to go out there and be authentic. And as much as, even if you don't like him, like, there are so many times where he has done something where I'm like, oh my God, this motherfucker is something else, but man, was that good. Like, just because he was being true. Like, the classic thing when he was debating Hillary, she's like, oh, we can't have him be in prison. And he's like, being president. He's like, yeah, because your ass be in prison. It's like,
zing.
That authenticism is the future and is what people gravitate for, no matter how much the elitists or the media tell you that that's not true.
For sure, yeah. And Michael, we'll do me the last one. It's we've got two more to go. Hey, what do you like to do when you have some downtime, my friend? What do you like getting up to?
One of my biggest problems is that I don't do downtime. I am 38 years old, wrapping up my PhD. I'm already retired from one career. I'm a perpetual overachiever because of the, I guess, stigma probably and biases that I still have from growing up poor, that all of those check marks in the box of success for some reason are something that I'm trying to impress people that I have no business trying to impress. So I think I do too much working. Like my biggest thing that I've loved since I got out of the police department and could get back to doing is coffee and cannabis in the morning with my blunt is the greatest thing that has ever existed in human history. But I've even turned that into a podcast. Like fucking, just leave it alone. Like, enjoy something. I wish I could do that. So, like, I mean, I go to the gym and I'll stay in shape, but I'm doing that because, probably because I feel like other people think I should probably be in shape.
Yeah. Good to hear you're authentic, mate. Man, but, everyone else is doing the same thing, just a lot of people are in denial.
I guess, I would really like to step back at some point in time. I would get I feel like if I could get policing to be a point where people are focused on solutions and not about the histrionics of what it was, because you just got to understand the history and then change it. It just informs our decisions.
Yeah.
It doesn't fucking do anything. So once I can get people there and I can eliminate some of my white guilt or police guilt or something like that, then I can go and move back on to my life and not give a fuck about anybody again. And I think that would be freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So, I feel like maybe I'm just grinding, trying to be I got to get as much material out there so I can get away from this thing.
For sure, yeah. And Mike, finally, mate, if you could invite 3 people to dinner, dead or alive, who would they be and why?
Right now, it's going to be Chris Hitchens and you two.
Yes. Oh, killing it. Dude, we should have dinner. Get down to Australia.
Well, how the fuck am I going to get to Australia? This is the problem.
Just swim there.
A lot of people also realize how big this world is.
For sure.
Whenever we're even talking about overpopulation, I'm like, you motherfuckers never drove anywhere. I drive from East Coast to West Coast in America, and man, there is a lot of nothing. And I mean, but you guys, you only have things on your North Coast, right?
Yeah, we don't have much. No. And we got snakes. We got lots of snakes. Lots of protein. Oh, man. Well, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show, man. Finally, if there's anything you want to plug now, just tell the listeners a little bit about your book and where we can find you.
Right, so the biggest thing that I'm doing right now is I'm kind of focused hard on getting a lot of material out there. So on May 4th, the cheesy Star Wars date, of course, that's why I chose to use it. We're launching a company called, we already have the company, but we're launching all the websites and stuff for a publishing company called iMember Media, like an Apple phone and Member Media. .com, and that is where we'll have everything. But I'm launching 5 podcasts, and I have my book out, Crimes and Punishment in the 21st Century. That's all philosophical if people want to get into the philosophies of it. And then all the podcasts, we have different modes. One is technically not me, but I guess you guys can know. Who cares? But so I do the Morning Blunt podcast, and I use a name called C Squared for that because of coffee and cannabis. C Squared.
Nice. That's cool, man.
So that's just a short podcast of quick thoughts of the day and dumb shit like that. And then I do one called Follow Up, where I go back and try to dismantle all my old arguments. I have one called Nuance that I do with a former professor, a religion scholar, a journalist, a friend of mine named Roberto Alejandro, and we have a whole bunch of episodes of that. And if people can go look at all those examples or have them all up, that's the easiest thing to do. And we'll try to find something for each person that feels a certain way and wants to approach it a certain way, and your kind of reform metrics. I think no matter who you are, you really do want police reform, even if you're small, a conservative, you want small government. So I have podcasts talking the angles of small government versus the angles of socialism and all of those things. Because when it comes to how our police department should behave, we actually all of us want them to behave the same way. We just have to codify that they will treat those others in that way that we want them to treat us.
For sure. Mate, thank you so much. Pleasure
Thank
having
you
a
so
chat.
much. Get my ass to Australia. I'll come.
Yeah.
I gotta do some painting. I'll be there. We can have that little dinner and we'll put like Christopher Hitchens' post picture on. Like,
Yeah. Well, I think I'll buy you a boat. I'll put his head on the side of the boat, and then I'll just pay for you to come down because I've got a full-time job, so. Oh mate, classic.
Good day, mate.
Yeah, very good.
Shut up, idiot. Get off of the show.
All right, mate. We'll speak to you later then. Yeah.
Thanks, Michael.
Alrighty, team. Really hope you enjoyed that one. As I said in the intro, his book, Crime and Punishments in the 21st Century, Michael Junior Wood. Really, really cool, exposing, elaborate, any word beginning with E. Head to his website as well. It's some really cool stuff. I was just having a read of his About page before, and there's a really good insight into why he's doing what he's doing and what he talks about. So that's michaelwoodjr.net, and then it's actually /about, but michaelwoodjr.net. Really cool stuff there. Guys, brought to you by Audible, so head to www.audibletrial.com/ADVF radio to get a free credit on a monthly subscription for about $16. Head to trueprotein.com.au, use the code ADVF for 10% off all sups there at trueprotein.com.au. And finally, guys, 10% off trips when you use the code radio at www.adventurefittravel.com. Alrighty, guys, we'll speak to you next week. Bye-bye.
Discovery Roger, go for deploy.